Thanks everybody for joining this particular session where we're going to actually look at an alternative to the use of HPV, and I want to just give our case study of how a transition from using HPV over to hypochlorous acid. I'm joined today by my colleague Andy. Andy is our hotel services manager, and Andy's been doing the trials over the last kind of 2 years and during the period that we've actually had the implementation in place, which took place around April of this year, Andy, didn't it? And I'm Paul Clark. I'm head of Bogs and Buns for the Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board, aka head of facilities. And basically it was through one of these conferences that we started to look at the use of hypochlorous acid. And I think before I start with the presentation, I'd just like to say that, you know, seeing the presentation so far, it's been absolutely fantastic to look at facilities management, soft FM as people want to call it. And I think the great thing about it is that in health at the present moment, yeah, we're very much surviving. But I really do feel that in facilities management, we're not surviving, we're thriving. And when we sit here and look at the amount of innovation which has gone on, you know, during the pandemic period, and we come and see the great work, you know, being presented by Phil and Emma this morning and colleagues, you know, I think it's a privilege to be able to actually stand here and present around our little case study that took place in North Wales. Okay, so it is our case study. So who are we? Who's Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board? A very complex name and a very complex organisation based up in North Wales that covers the 6 regions that make up North Wales. We're an integrated health board. We've got 3 district general hospitals, 18 community hospitals, 90 health centres, 105 GP practices. We've got mental health units, dental surgeries, community health services. We've even got one of the biggest prisons in the UK as part of our portfolio. And we've got about 134 wards, about 2,400 patients across 137 different buildings. Okay, so our HPV story, it started back in 2012, so it's about 10 years ago, where we saw the technology and we thought, yeah, let's be an early adopter. Let's actually get ourselves onto using HPV. At that point in time, UV wasn't about. We went to that in 2013. So at that point, we went through quite an onerous trial process to actually see what was the best equipment on the market. And we invested in 3 machines, which were supported through our 3 main district general hospitals. As I say, we moved on to UV in 2013, and since then we've built up quite an armoury of final decontamination equipment, as I call it. We've actually got about 9 HPV machines. We've got 18 UV systems. We've also, over that time, trialled most products that are on the market, and we're quite lucky that a lot of companies will now come to us and say, Paul and the team, will you actually look at our product and actually give us a customer view on whether it's kind of really fit for purpose and how we can actually improve those products. And we did a lot of work in regards to you know, the introduction of robotics, and everybody has maybe seen the UVD robot that first came to us back in 2018, where we actually did some work around making sure that that was fit for purpose for use in healthcare. I've just put that picture up there to actually the sun. And for me, you know, that's the most powerful UV system in the world. And it's amazing, isn't it, that somebody once said to me, that might be the most powerful system in the world, or UV system in the world. But actually, if we put the moon in the way of it and we make a big shadow, actually we'll never get sunburnt, will we? And I always say that you'll never get sunburnt at night. Yeah. So when you think about UV, yeah, against HPV, you know, shadowing and distance really is a really kind of challenging part to the use of that type of technology. Okay, can I hand over to Andy, who's going to go through our case study for us.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Andy Bullock, and I'm the Hotel Services Manager for Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board. Just a little bit of background to my journey to get to where I am today, stood in front of you, telling you about the trial that we carried out. I started with the NHS, with the organisation in 1992 as a relief cook. I was fortunate enough to become one of the catering management team, and in 2015 I was successful in my application for the hotel services covering porter and domestics accommodation. So I took up the role. I embraced the challenges that we had in all our services, and in 2020, as we all know, COVID came along, whacked us in the face, and I can honestly say it's been the most challenging 2 years of my life. I don't think any of us, hopefully, will ever face anything like that again, the devastation that it caused, but more the demands that it placed upon our services, our staff, our mental health and everything that went with that. So during COVID, we lost 10% of our workforce overnight with shielders. I was in a position where I was getting pressure from head of nursing for a turnover of a ward. My staff had been flogged for the last probably 6 months or so, and we could set up a HPV programme on a 6-bedded ward, and I just literally had to volunteer, and I did. I said to the boys, you set it up, you set it going, and I will sit outside, as you do with a HPV, and I will watch the programme through, and I will finish off at the end and clear away, and the ward will be ready, and we'll meet the deadline that was put on us. So I went up to the ward that evening about 9 o'clock, and I sat at the ward for elderly and infirm. I sat outside the 6-bedded ward bay on the ward, and as the wind blew, the panel that was up against the wall, which had the seals round it, I had 3 hours to contemplate what we were putting our staff through, the risk, the dangers, what was on the other side of that wall, and is this acceptable for us to be putting our staff into this position? When the process had finished, I was then expected to go into the ward area with my little Geiger counter to make sure that the area was safe and that the levels of hydrogen peroxide were at a safe level. Luckily it was, but again, we still found that with the HPV, we did have blank spots within the room where the dehumidifier as such, the defogger wouldn't clear areas. So I left the ward that night with a light bulb moment that there must be something safer, quicker, easier for a staff to use, and probably 4 months later, Paul came to me, and as our across the board, can we look at a different process? And we've seen the hypochlorous acid, which we've been introduced to, and would you be able to do a trial on that for us? And I was more than happy. I embraced it because I knew I've been in the situation our staff had been in, and I wasn't happy. So we, sorry. The initial trial was held at Bangor Ysbyty Gwynedd Bangor. We had 2 individual rooms on the paediatric ward, which was Minffordd ward, and both rooms had been previously cleaned by our domestic staff. We'd used Acticlor and we'd done the physical clean, 1,000 parts ppm, and we carried out ATP testing, and also the micro swabs testing were taken as well for the biological efficacy. The rooms were then misted with Solvic solution, and we used there was 2 rooms, we used 2 different delivery methods, but both of them fill the room, the whole room. It doesn't have to be sealed like it has to be with the HPV, because as we've seen if anybody was in with the first presentation now, it's completely safe. Therefore, it takes away the risk of contaminating the rest of the ward. We retook swabs in each room. The results for the ATPs, obviously we had immediately. The other results, the microswabs, they had to be carried away to an independent laboratory, and we got the results came back later. So the results from the room 1, again, the pre-mist, the counts there were quite significantly high, and after post-mist, there was a significant reduction in the protein that was found. With the microbiological swabs, again, a significant reduction from the pre-mist to the post-mist, and you can see on the right there the pre-log and the post-log reduction that was achieved in using the fogging machine. Very similar on room 2, and I say exactly the same process was used on each one, the only difference being that there was a different machine that was used. And again, the micro swabs showed a significant reduction. Every case there was a reduction, so we knew we were up against the same results from HPV. And the conclusions from our first results were that the initial standards of cleaning by our staff were very high, they were very good. Some places were missed during the process, which again we looked at the training, we looked at how we'd done the process, but by misting through the mister, reduced counts to less than 10 in room 1, and through Mr. B we reduced the counts to less than 10 in 66% of areas in the room. We did high touch areas, which were the light switches, bed rails, anywhere, tops of bins, and again it confers that there's an additional benefit by fogging the whole room once you've done your physical clean, in reducing the bacteria that's in the room. And then as well, because it fills the whole room, it will mitigate areas that have been missed throughout the routine cleaning and disinfection. We then moved on to a larger trial, and we wanted to get the other areas of the health board involved. We started off in Chirk Hospital. We also did acute site in Glenclwyd and Ysbyty Gwynedd. I'm based in Ysbyty Gwynedd at the end. We did 2 general wards with a communal bathroom, 2 high dependency rooms, and 52 swab sites were identified and swabbed. We set out to do the process by swabbing, cleaning physically, swabbing again, misting. Unfortunately, we were in the throes of COVID, and we weren't always able to have the time that we'd set aside to be able to carry out that process. So trials were carried out, as I say, we started with our domestic staff in Ceiriog Ward in Chirk Community Hospital. The swabs were taken from 2 areas, a side room with a bathroom which had not been previously cleaned, and a wet room which had been cleaned in the previous hours prior to carrying out the swabs. The side room was swabbed, cleaned, again with the Acticlaw, re-swabbed, misted again, given 5 minutes dwell time, and then the final swabs were taken once we'd done that process. Again, the results we found were very positive. We had a couple of incidents where obviously contamination had occurred between the cleaning and after the fogging on the bin top and the under buttons or underbed buttons. There was obviously an increase, considerable increase. But again, after the misting had happened, there was a reduction to less than 10. Just in a graph, the same data, but it just goes to show the significant reduction. We then moved the trial to Glenclwyd Hospital. Trials were carried out on Ward 2. Again, domestic staff were involved in the process. Swabs were taken from the bay, which again, because it was a community hospital, we didn't have the luxury of being able to swab. They needed the ward back in use as soon as possible. So we'd cleaned it previously, we took swabs, and the room again was misted, and then we retook both swabs, ATP swabs and microbiological. Again, the results are just there at a glance, and a significant reduction in all areas that were swabbed. Again, on a graph, we can see on the left, post-clean, and anything on the right again was the post-mist after the area had been cleaned, fogged with the hypochlorous acid. We went back to Ysbyty Gwynedd and we did HDU, 2 bays on HDU. There was 3 bays actually in HDU, and swabs were taken from 2 rooms. The rooms were swabbed, cleaned, re-swabbed and misted again, and the final swabs were taken. Whilst we were there, we actually did the 3rd bay, because what we found was, from our staff being used to using the HPV, instead of having to stand outside the room, just preventing anybody from going into the room, they had the free time to be able to move to the room just next door, and whilst the process was occurring, start decanting the next room. We just used it as an opportunity to be able to do that and do the extra room as well. Again, the results in the reduction are very significant. And with the log counts again, with the exception of the cushion inside the chair and the front of the chair, which is obviously decontaminated, the radiator top, again, once we'd done the actual swab, the actual misting, there was a significant reduction again. So the results were, from the test post-misting, only 4 of 52 swabs showed any counts at the end of the misting process. And with those 4, there was an average 3 log reduction on the pre-misting counts. So I think we're quite confident that it works. It brings down the contamination significantly, but I think for us, the time scale in which this process takes is the biggest game changer. And we've gone from doing a 6-bedded bay on a ward with a HPV 5 hours, anything from 4.5 to 6 hours, depending on conditions, whether or not it's blowing a gale outside, whether or not it's the humidity of the room, time of year, and we can't get away from the actual physical pre-clean. That's going to take us 2 to 3 hours, but the actual process of carrying out either a HPV or a hypochlorous demist has reduced from, like I say, 4.5 to 6 hours down to half an hour. And I think that is the biggest game changer for us, not having staff sat outside rooms waiting for the process to finish, for the room to be safe. We can put the machine on. It takes less than half an hour with everything. I think it's 3 minutes to actually expel the solution, 5 minutes dwell time, and then for it to dissipate and clear away and out of the room. It's done in less than half an hour, which when we're at the end of the day, we know the pressures we're under with regards to bums in beds and patient movement. It's been an absolute game changer for us all, I think, and I'm so glad that I've been involved in it. And again, in high dependency, 100% of the swabs were less than 100 per swab post-mist. Post-intervention was better at every stage, and the subconscious focus in the there was obviously from the HDU area, we feel there was a subconscious focus because our cleaners were cleaning in a critical environment. So as a summary, the standard of cleaning is very high across all 3 hospitals. Cleaning, physical clean, removed most of the surface bioburden, and particularly when the cleaning intervention was performed immediately prior to swabbing. And I think that's where some of the results were slightly higher, was where we'd pre-cleaned the area purely because of time constraints. Rooms that had been cleaned prior to arrival had slightly higher initial microbial burdens, possibly due to the recontamination in the lag time between the cleaning and the swabbing. In HDU, normal cleaning resulted in 86% of samples returning a less than 100 CFU swab. However, after misting, this rose to 100% of the samples. The current cleaning regime, detergent plus Actichlor plus, is thorough and effective. However, misting Solvic confers additional microbial reductions in surfaces where things have been missed or recontaminated. And I'll hand you back to Paul for the time being.
Thanks, Andy. Well, what's incredible, that Andy was actually 6 foot tall before COVID. And he had black hair as well when I first met him. No, thanks, Andy. That's a really great piece of work, to be quite honest, and I think it's great that, you've embraced this and actually kind of really have become a supporter of alternative kind of processes for decontamination. So thank you very much for that. So what do we use? Solvic. It's 300 times more powerful than bleach. So everybody will say, well, if this stuff is so good, why haven't we been using it for years? And the reason behind that is because hypochlorous acid is actually quite unstable. So for many periods of time, we've kind of used it in small quantities because actually we can make a batch of it and then it kind of disperses back into its kind of natural kind of format very, very quickly. So what we've got with Solvic is actually a hypochloric acid that is actually stable. So it's got a shelf life of 12 months. So it's actually now become a bit of a game changer for us, that we can actually now use that in healthcare, and we've also got that kind of ability to not have to make it really, really quick, and then somebody's holding a red sign up at me at the back there. Oh, green sign, brilliant, great. Do we all have to vote? Thanks. That's Solvic, and that's the reason why we haven't been using hypochloric acid in the past, is because basically you know, it has been a product which has been unstable. So we've now got a product that's really good. We've got a product that's great for us to actually use it. You know, we've been on Earth, what, about 8 billion years? Yeah, we've got white blood cells in us. That's exactly the same as what the makeup of hypochlorous acid is. Yeah, that fights infection inside our bodies. So why don't we actually unleash it and let it fight, yeah, bacteria within healthcare? Okay, how does it work? Very quickly, it's fast, it's simple, it's highly cost effective. You know, I was just speaking to somebody before where they were saying that I think for 4 pots of hydroperoxide, they were paying in the region of something like £225, you know. I think we're paying about 15 quid a litre for this stuff. It's pH neutral, it's really good for the environment, it's really good for equipment. It's effective, yeah, and there's no chemical resistance to it. You know, so for me, it's just got all pluses. There's Hydra, there's a machine that we use, it's on display today. Me and Andy are operational managers. We've come to tell you about our case study and the use of hypochlorous acid in our health board. Please do go and have a look at the product out there. Yeah, it's stuff that we're using now on a day-to-day basis across the health board, and we found that it's really robust, you know, and it's really compatible to what we want to use as a final decontamination process. Okay, conclusion. We've worked really well with Metis. It's been great. I think Tony was presenting before in regards to hypochlorous acid. You know, we've had great discussions around this. There's no competition with us. But it's been really good. It's had really good findings. And I think the initial question was, can hypochlorous acid take on HPV? Yes, it can. I think it can also take on UV. Because the big difference around it is, I think they do the same thing, but actually we don't need that kind of expanded time at the end to actually let the product decompose back into its natural format. You know, so that's where the cost saving is, that's where the benefit is, that we can actually kind of, you know, I think we're being told now through our infection prevention teams and through the facilities teams that, you know, where we were taking maybe 2-3 days to actually HPV a ward, we can actually do that in a day now. So if we get a 6-bed bay empty and we're going to hypochlorous acid, that we're actually going to carry on and do the whole ward, which is absolutely fantastic. So as a health board, we've got 8 machines in use at the present moment. We've got a business case at the present moment to see where we can actually purchase an extra 20 machines so we can actually have them on site within our community sites, you know. And it's amazing how well supported this is. It's not just around facilities, it's not just around hotel services. We're getting amazing feedback from our IP colleagues. We're getting amazing feedback from our nursing colleagues, and not just our kind of nursing colleagues on the ward, but those senior nursing colleagues within our organisation that are fully supportive of the change through to this new technology.